Welcome to the Buckeye Report on Buckeyes Now. Along with Andrew Lind, I'm Brendan Gulick, and it is spring practice here inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, where things have gone pretty smoothly so far for Ryan Day and a team that is obviously coming off a year where they're certainly hoping to have a better end of the season. Obviously, the Rose Bowl was a great win, but this team has bigger goals than just winning the Rose Bowl, and I know that has been front and center. As they've had a lot of different things they're discussing and gearing up for here in 2022. We had a chance to talk with quarterbacks today and with linebackers. Different position groups have been made available throughout the course of the spring practice sessions. And so obviously, as you would imagine, there were an awful lot of folks here eager to hear what's going on in CJ Stroud's world, both based on, hey, what did you like about last year and you know, how did you grow through it? And then, hey, what's spring practice been like? Why don't we just start with CJ? What was your major takeaway from what he said today?
Yeah, I mean, it's really impressive to see how he's just kind of grown over the last year. You know, last year during spring practice, we didn't even really get to talk to him. It was just kind of like he was, you know, kind of taking in everything and trying to battle to be the guy. And then this year, he is the guy. And you kind of see that just in the way he carries himself around, you know, just walking around practice. And then in media availabilities, he's talking about diagnosing coverages, like those kind of things. And you've really seen this next step that he's taken. I think he's really taken the Rose Bowl, the performance in the Rose Bowl, and ran with it. And, you know, looks as impressive as ever. Really,
he's an interesting guy because I think where he was a year ago was probably a bit uncomfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can kind of tell he doesn't love all the attention. He just wants to go out and play football. But when you play quarterback at Ohio State, you got to understand that the attention comes with part of the territory there. And I think where he is now, 12 months after, you know, where people really started to first pay a bunch of attention to him, he seems a little bit more comfortable, a little less flustered by, let's be honest, 50 people crowding around a table that are all within a couple of feet of you. You know, he's a college kid. That can be a little intimidating, and everybody's hanging on your every word. I just think there's a general slightly more calm nature to the way that he handles himself.
Yep.
And maybe it's just the confidence of having gone out and played well last year to you know, let that be the case.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the 13 press conferences he had after the games last year, you know, it's like doing anything else. The more you do it, the more comfortable you get. And, you know, he's out here cracking jokes, trying to get an NIL deal with Rydell, the helmet company, you know, those things. Like a year ago, even during the season last year, he wasn't, you know, at that point. So it's cool to see that progression, just, you know, him personally. But then I think once he gets out on the field, you know, you'll see it in the spring game. You'll see it early on next season where it's just, you know, you're doing it multiple times, you get more comfortable with it and you grow. And I mean, it's really like anything else. So
what do you make of all that with the helmet potential change? I mean, it's not a set in stone for sure. Yeah. I'm wearing this new helmet, but clearly experimenting here in the spring to see if there's a better option for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes to speak to just, you know, Ohio State standing as one of those premier schools that they go to. You know, Nike does the same thing. Rydell does it. You know, they'll test things out with the premier programs and say, hey, we want your feedback and those kind of things. So for CJ, maybe the impact part of it, which is like the flex, you know, portions of the helmet, those parts aren't as necessary because he's obviously wearing the black jersey. He's not getting hit, like those kind of things. But he talked about like his vision, that he's able to see better. It's more comfortable. And like we said before, if you're comfortable with something, you're not thinking about it, worried about it, not going to get hurt likely, you know. So it's just one of those things. It's pretty cool that Ohio State's in that situation.
CJ's obviously going to have a familiar group of skill position players around him this year. He had a little bit of fun with his former high school offensive lineman. I think he even looked at the camera at one point and said, I love you boys, but maybe a different caliber of offensive line that he plays behind here in Columbus. You know, all the reason in the world to think that this kid can continue to have Heisman caliber expectations, that he'll be that much more ready to handle him this year because he's got a year's worth of experience. And I suppose when you have guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba and Emeka Egbuka and Marvin Harrison Jr. and so on and so forth to throw to, probably takes a little pressure off you.
Well,
I had some fun.
I think the important part of that is, you know, a lot of people, I mean, even in the media have talked about how they'd like to see him run the ball more. But if you look at it and you have 5-star, 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 5-star in front of you, blocking for you, and then you have 5-star, 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 4-star, you know, throwing that you're going to throw the ball to, or you turn around and you say, hey, here's another 5-star. I'm not going to run the ball very often. So, I understand where he's coming from.
Yeah. Hey, we had a chance to talk with Kyle McCord too. God, I'm so impressed with his maturity. Kyle's in a really challenging position because there's a guy in front of him that won the job last year who went from having never thrown a pass in college football to being a Heisman finalist, and easily one of the best players in the country as the year progressed. And Kyle, I mean, it's no secret. He knows his role right now. He is the primary backup quarterback. The room looks a lot different this year with Jack Miller gone and with Quinn Ewers gone. And obviously the addition of Devin Brown, who's a highly recruited young man. I was so impressed with the conversation I had with Kyle around where his head is at, what he went through last year in trying to get his preparation at a high level, knowing that he's always one snap away from being in the game. He talked to me about how challenging that is because you're trying to prepare like you're a starter, but you don't necessarily have the reward of getting out there and getting to execute it. Mm-hmm. But he said you almost have like the fear of failure put in you because if you don't prepare and you do get that chance, you're in trouble.
Yeah, and I think he's in an interesting position that maybe CJ wasn't in, or Jack Miller before him, or alongside him 2 years ago, is because this year they're going to have games that are going to get out of hand. Like they play Arkansas State and Toledo this year, and those games are the year you fully expect to see Kyle McCord come in halftime, maybe a little before that, as the game gets out of hand. So he'll get that experience and he'll be able to play enough that he's going to be happy, and then presumably, CJ has another great year. He's the number 1 or number 2 overall pick in next year's NFL draft. And then here's Kyle McCord with 2 years of eligibility or 3 years of eligibility left, where he's going to be in that same position. Devin Brown is going to then get those reps as his backup. And it's just a cycle that, they're kind of in that sweet spot where you actually have kind of a clear succession plan versus just a log jam of quarterbacks all being in this room.
Last year.
Yeah, last year. Like, it was great to have all that talent in the room, but at the same time, like none of them really understood or knew what the plan was beyond last year. So, I understand why 2 of them left. I understand, the situation now, and I think they're just in a better situation overall.
And Kyle was pretty quick to say, look, I know what it appears to be that, hey, why are you still here? Because you've got a Heisman finalist in front of you and you may not get on the field this year. He basically tried to downplay all that and say, look, I like the development process here. I'm with one of the best offensive minds and quarterbacks coaches in college football with Ryan Day here. I think I'm getting a lot out of the development part of being here. Now, could he change his tune? Could anybody change their tune a year from now or even half a year from now? It's fair to say that things change, right? But I just got a genuine impression from Kyle McCord that he likes being here, that he understands what's going on. He was exceptionally complimentary and quickly complimentary of what CJ's done. He wasn't surprised by the fact that CJ had the year he had last year. And look, it's going to be competitive. And I think one of the things that Ryan Day has instilled here is if it's not just about here, you come to Ohio State because you want to be great. Probably you have aspirations to play in the NFL. This is in some ways preparing you for professional football settings where it's pretty unlikely you're going to walk in and be gifted a job. You got to compete for it.
I mean, I think just the idea that, waiting 1 year isn't a bad thing when you're behind somebody who's, presumably the first pick next year, a strong Heisman Trophy candidate. And then you also have somebody who's pushing you behind you as well to get better every single day. So it's not like you're just sitting there doing nothing, waiting. You have to hold that other person off to be that number 2 guy, and then then win the job next year. And really, to me, if somebody's going to transfer, they're going to look for a better situation. It's not just immediately about playing time, though I know it can be. But if you're Kyle McCord, you're looking out there and you're saying, okay, well, where in the country can I go that I'm going to be in a better situation than I am now, or a year from now? And if that year from now you're not going to find a place, well, why do it? Just wait, learn, continue to develop, be ready. Because I mean, it's possible that something happens to CJ, God forbid, if anybody wants that to happen. But, if something happens, he's in that situation and he's in it now. It's not like, so I mean, he's in the best situation for himself. And I think he realizes it. And it really goes to speak just to his maturity level and all of that.
Yeah. And, let's keep in mind that these guys were freshmen last year. I realized CJ had been in the program a year prior. This is really year 3 for him in Columbus now. But there is also the natural maturity of just being an 18-year-old kid that leaves high school to becoming a 19, 20, and eventually 21-year-old kid in college. And there is some level of maturity that develops there just naturally. So a good afternoon for sure, talking with Ohio State's starting quarterback and primary backup in CJ and in Kyle. Couple quick notes on the linebacker side. I mean, look, Jim Knowles is very linebacker driven. He loves this system, and I think he really, really likes the guys that are here. Steele Chambers talked today, Taraj Mitchell, Tommy Eichenberg, a couple of the guys that spoke with us. I think Tommy Eichenberg early in the year last year took a lot of heat, and by the end of the year opened a lot of eyeballs with the way he played in Pasadena. Yeah. Steele Chambers was a terrific linebacker in his first go-round at the position last year. Taraj Mitchell had a little bit of an up-and-down year, but I think the big difference going into 2022 is that coming out of the 2020 season when you lost 4 guys that all went pro and you had a bunch of question marks trying to figure it out going into last season, now you've got a lot of experience for guys that played in some really meaningful games that you're going to lean on going into the start of this year.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously the quarterback position got a lot of the attention last year because there was no experience there. But really, like you had mentioned, they lost their top 4 linebackers from the season prior, and then had to come, they had guys who were waiting in the wings. They had Kayvon Pope and Dallas Gant, who ended up leaving because, it didn't work out for them for one reason or another. And then Taraja, he was in a very similar position, but he decided, and he spoke about it today, that he just didn't want to give up on the situation, knows that there's things that he has to improve upon and wants to get better and wants to see this thing through. And then, obviously you mentioned Steele Chambers, Tommy Eichenberg. There's actually so much talent at that position now, and only 2 spots really in Jim Knowles' defense that Cade Stover, who is probably best suited to be a linebacker athletically, is now moved to tight end, and
back and forth.
So it's just kind of one of those things you now go from a position that was maybe a concern last year to now you have almost too many. Mitchell Melton, linebacker, now being at defensive end. So it's really, there's just so much talent there, and really it's a matter of putting the right guys on the field at the right time.
In a lot of ways, things are as they have been, and how fortunate we are that they have been this way as Buckeye fans. Things are good in Columbus. You got a lot of talent. You got tough decisions to make because you got lots of really good players, and you're trying to figure out how they all fit best together on the field. Obviously, with all the coaching staff changes on the defensive side of the ball, there are a lot of attention paid on installing a new defense right now and just getting comfortable with some of those things. A couple of guys that have gone into the transfer portal in Shaw and in Cavazos. Obviously Bryson played a ton last year. Legend, not as much, but you're going to lose a couple pieces on the defensive backfield side. And we'll have a chance to talk with the defensive backs coming up on Friday.
Well, I think it's important too. Those guys obviously were a part of the team, and Shaw came in and started 12 games and was a vital part of the defense. He gets a lot of flack, and rightfully so, for just the play. But you got to remember, there's a reason that he was having to be in those positions because everybody in front of him wasn't doing their job. So, I know he gets a lot of flack for that. But and then Jim Knowles comes in, and it's kind of, he's raising the level of competition, trying to figure out who's the best player at those positions, and sometimes it just doesn't work out for guys. Be thankful he was a part of the team last year, and now there's so many safeties again this year. I mean, there's literally 10 safeties on the roster for 3 spots that and you have 3 deep pretty much at every single position. So it was expected that there was going to be turnover like that.
Perry Eliano and Tim Walton have their work cut out for them. That's for sure. But that's what this time of year is for, trying to figure out how all these things go. And just like last year, the highly publicized quarterback battle, Ryan Day considered fall camp to basically be just an extension of what he saw in the spring. That's largely the case in the fall on the defensive side of the ball as well. It's, have a good spring practice, get better, just across the board, get better.
Yeah.
And put yourself in position to win a job here in a few months.
I would be really encouraged, though, by the fact that the thing that Ryan Day said that he's most concerned about is the depth along the offensive line. For the defense over the last 2 years to be two of the statistically worst defenses in school history, and that not even be a concern for him tells you everything that you need to know about just, the dedication that Jim Knowles and Perry Eliano and Tim Walton are putting in toward, installing this new scheme, making sure that guys are doing the things that they're supposed to fundamentally and those kind of things. So, it's obviously a positive thing that they've only been here for 3 months, and that's not even really a concern for him.
Looking forward to seeing how this team continues to come together. Spring practice is certainly in the home stretch. The spring game is coming up in about a week and a half from now. It's on Saturday, April 16th, Easter Saturday, 12 noon. It'll be at the Shoe. Certainly fans are in attendance this year. I guess those are things we're still getting used to saying, like, hey, that's 2 thumbs up and go have some fun and tailgate and come on out and watch the Buckeyes play in the Shoe on Saturday. So it's a week and a half from now. Of course, we'll have you covered here on Buckeyes Now. We certainly appreciate you joining us here during the offseason. We'll try to keep you updated as best we can. Lots of recruiting news coming down the pipe here as well, with lots of guys that have been able to come visit here during spring practice. This is a critical time for the future of the program, not just the present, as the Buckeyes try to figure out a way to stay on top of the college football world. What they've been able to do here the last 2 decades is unbelievable. And frankly, I think a lot of coaches will tell you it is probably harder to stay there once you get there than it is to get there in the first place, because everybody's gunning for you. And at this time of year where there's not a lot of stress, it's a lot easier to be thankful for having teams that continue to win. Geez, Ryan Day's 34-4 during his time leading the Buckeyes. So, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of an extension of that, though, we actually talked to Luke Whippler last week, and he talked about how the Michigan game, the loss is still driving them from last year. And, he talked about being on top of the college football world. If you think about it, though, they finished in effectively second or third in the Big Ten last year. So, there's still a lot to work on and a lot to motivate them, and, a reason for them to come out and say, not be complacent every single day.
Buckeyes Now on SI for all the latest news and information around the Ohio State football program. We're coming to you back on Friday here from the Woody Hayes Athletic Center to keep you updated on spring practice. For Andrew Lind, I'm Brendan Gulick. We'll see you again real soon. This has been the Buckeye Report on Buckeyes Now.